and the districts prepared and sent to Treasury for approval. But your government, not mine, yours, wouldn't agree to that either. So don't start playing politics saying it's all, the combined authority playing politics. It's your government that won't agree at the moment to anything. Now, I accept that you're totally preoccupied with the shambles you're creating with Brexit. I accept that. All I can say is leave devolution to those who know about it best, and not your government, maybe.
Councillor Orwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that there is all this money available to us, and it's a shame that we haven't been able to access it before. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying we need that money. It should come into our region, and whatever deal can be arranged that's viable, and I accept, all the hard work that's gone in on many, many sides, but we need that money, and the main point is to get it as quickly and expediently as we can. And as we say, probably if we want to look at a situation, 4 or 5 years from now, and to change things when we've seen how whatever deal we do get works, fair enough. But let's get that money into our area so that we can be spending it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Margaret. And can I ask a favour? Can I ask a favour? Thank you for that.
Oh, sorry.
That was very helpful. Thank you. Can I ask a favour?
Sorry. Technical hitch.
See, the Conservatives can't even turn up a microphone. You're in the zone today, Margaret. Can I ask a favour of you? And that is you have a serious conversation with Councillor Harvey afterwards.
Thank you. Councillor Swift.
Yeah, Chair. I'm a bit worried about what we are hearing from the Conservative opposition. Because when we went for either a West Yorkshire solution or a Leeds City region solution, that got batted back. When we then switched, with some misgivings on the part of this council, when we then switched to supporting a One Yorkshire, the government took about 2 years to come back and tell us why not. Now, even though we can see a fair bit of common sense in the reason why they're now saying why not, the fact is that we got pushed into that because they wouldn't previously agree Leeds City region or West Yorkshire. We've now got from the Secretary of State a fairly clear guideline that says go for city region please, and when we say yeah, we'll go for city region, then noises which I hope are not indicative of what's going to come from the Conservative government in the future, but we now get various noises saying, well, maybe that's not quite right, maybe we've got to look at other things. And I think I do agree with Councillor Holwell that this situation does need resolving quickly, but I do hope that once the government have got a nice clear-cut fresh bid on their desk, for whether it's Leeds City region or West Yorkshire, I don't really mind. But once we've put in a proposal that fits in with what their guidelines are, I do actually hope that we get a fairly quick, no-nonsense agreement to it.
Thank you, Kevin. It's unfortunate that the Yorkshire Leaders meeting that was scheduled for this Thursday has been cancelled, because my view is simple. That leaders should be taking the lead on this. We should not simply sit back and expect government to come up with solutions. And I have to say that there are 1 or 2 people who think that's going to happen. It is not. It is up to the individual authorities to come forward with solutions. We have a West Yorkshire Leaders meeting tomorrow in place of the Yorkshire Leaders meeting, and I'll put those points to my fellow West Yorkshire leaders. And just to thank all colleagues, Mr Mayor, for the clear steer that I've got from colleagues today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you've had a question. You can give a personal explanation, if you wish to, on your first question.
Mr. Mayor, just to be very short, can the leader of the council explain to us why he was only...
That's another question, Councillor Harvey.
Right,
Please sit down.
But he was the only person actually...
Councillor Harvey. Thank you. Are there any other questions to Councillor Box? Councillor Stansby.
Sorry, probably not the right place to ask this question, but is there any way we could have some kind of briefing on this so that we can understand a little bit more? I feel like I'm not quite au fait with everything.
Just to reassure Councillor Stansby that every time I mention the word devolution at the controlling group meetings, eyes glaze over and people say, oh no, not again. It's true, come on, be honest about it, we do. So, I think it's a fair point that you make, and I think once we've perhaps got a little bit further down the line in terms of what deal might be available, we do have some kind of a seminar, more than happy to do that, so we can look at some of the options, and more particularly, look at what we can do with the cash that we might get from Treasury.
Thank you, Councillor Box. Are there any further questions to Councillor Box? We shall now move on to agenda item 8, which is to receive written Cabinet members' reports in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14.1. Cabinet members have up to 5 minutes to present their report, and there are a further 15 minutes allocated to enable each Cabinet member to respond to any questions or brief comments on issues within their respective portfolios. The first report is from Councillor Mrs Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll see from my report it's been quite an extensive one, and there were some very interesting topics in. In fact, some of them are so good I've actually written them twice. For any eagle people who have noticed, I've done it twice. Just a couple of things to point out. On pages 13 to 17, it talks about housing poverty and all the initiatives that we are taking to deal with it. And that leads me on to the fact that we will be bringing a report very soon to Cabinet and probably Council on the housing strategy. We want to develop, as I've said before, we want to develop and bring developers into Wakefield, but we have to get things right and we have to do it right, and we have to take action. And again, it's been very topical today on the news about landlords, road landlords, not dealing with tenants in a proper manner, and we're going to tackle that in our housing strategy. We're going to look at real tough enforcement, because we have so many people coming to us who are afraid to report the landlord in case they get evicted, and it's a real issue for us, and that was pointed out this morning on the radio. And it's something that matters very much to me, and we will be working on sorting this out. The final thing I'd like to raise is that we have agreed a loan for Wakefield Trinity, which will be signed later this week, and that finally will come to a resolution. I've been working on this for 12 years to try and find a solution, and I hope that when they actually on their own ground, they'll go from strength to strength. They are playing well at the moment, but so are Castleford and so are Featherstone, Graham. But I just think we need to find a solution for Wakefield, and I believe that this week we really will find one. I'll answer any questions.
Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Jeffrey's report? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Denise, on page 11 at the bottom, can I say how much I welcome the fact that we're actually taking action to resolve the Chantry House situation, a real eyesore in our ward. But can I also highlight that about 2,500 privately owned houses are being built in our ward, in East Ward, many of which will not be accessible and affordable to the people that we represent. And therefore, where it says right at the bottom about 10 to 18 new homes, what I'd really like to see is that there will be 80 maybe homes that have been negotiated with housing associations or are certainly affordable to some of the people that live in my ward.
Yes, I think, you know, that it's very important that we do that. We did have a discussion the other day, Olivia, about this, and it's very important that we have affordable homes for rent, and that's something that we're going to work on.
Councillor Burton.
Yeah, the Imagine Nottingham event, Denise, I am aware from some of the students that they certainly felt, they were impressed by the fact that this event wasn't just an exercise, a school exercise, it was going to be part and parcel of the vision and action plan. And it got mentioned last week, so I'm delighted to see that students going forward will be able to see some of the ideas they've proposed being put into effect. So thank you for that.
Councillor Lunn.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley really has covered the point I was going to raise. I mean, Chantry House has been such an eyesore for so long and overcast some of the lovely work, the refurbishment of Kirkgate Station, the lovely new history building, and it's great to see it go, and I'm delighted that the land is going to be used for housing. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Denise, I just want to say how welcome it is that the old pit baths is now come down and how much better it's looking. It is a big sadness for our communities when something like this that has got sort of an heritage to us does get demolished, but from, like you say in your report, for the best part of 30 years, it has been an absolute eyesore. And whilst we like to reminisce about the old pit baths, I've heard lots of stories about how dolphins were once kept there. It has been sort of downgrading as a fantastic community that we've got. So I just want to pass on thanks for all the hard work you've done in securing this. Is looking much better already.
Councillor Monica Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say, Denise, how happy I am to hear that Wakefield Trinity is staying put and staying in the home they've been in for a long time. An important part of our ward, and it was a great thing for the area, and it's a great thing for Wakefield that they have a settled home. We just need to control a little bit of the parking around Bellevue on match days. That is just one thing. I don't know how that can be resolved, but the fact is we're just happy that Wakefield Trinity is staying put. I'm very pleased. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just respond to that? Yeah, thank you for that, Monica. There is going to be a new car park on Barnsley Road anyway, but we are talking to Trinity about alternative parking, so it will be addressed.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 16 about the tenancy enforcement, Denise, it mentions tenancy enforcement here, and I'm wondering, does the strategic housing review of this consider HMOs? Because we are getting more houses and multiple occupations which are single tenancy agreements, and I'd be grateful to know that these are going to be monitored and some stringent activity taking place in these, because we are concerned in terms of the tenants who are individually sometimes placed in these accommodations, and sometimes they do turn out to be the most vulnerable people in our community that need that tenancy support.
Yeah, thank you for that, Betty. I think we're all struggling with HMO's situation, and that is going to be part of the plan, that we do tackle it and deal with it in a proper manner. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question was about parking too for Bellevue, so thank you for answering that. It was an immediate concern that it just gets absolutely gridlocked down there, and you know, on Doncaster Road and all the way up Agbrigg, so it's good to know they're going to provide proper parking there. Thanks.
Councillor Orwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just another point about affordable housing. I know we're all trying to provide and want affordable housing, but I noticed in the Times about a fortnight, 3 weeks ago, that they're running a competition for modular housing, to the best designed modular housing, and the prices that they quoted were between 65 and 85,000 pounds, and these were, you know, really attractive dwellings, you know, not like old prefabs, not that they didn't serve a purpose at the time, but I just wondered whether the council were going to pursue looking at this form of building, you know, to do certain amounts of commissioning these sort of houses to provide housing fairly quickly at a fairly reasonable rate that people could afford or afford to rent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Margaret. Actually, some people are coming in to see me next week to put their proposals forward for modular housing, so it is something that we would be interested in looking at, perhaps through Bridge Homes or working with WDH.
Are there any other questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Jeffrey's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Mrs Jeffrey. Next is the portfolio holder for Adults and Health. Councillor Mrs Garbett, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, there's quite a lot in my report this time, but I just want to mention a few things. Just the national interest in our connecting care work, that still continues to grow. Work on developing of the hub, the building started in February, so there again, it's all connecting with that. GP hub referral rollout, that's again connecting with the hubs. So it's making a real good facility that will enhance people's way of being able to go direct instead of being referred to different people around the district. So also could I mention the Wakefield Equipment Service and Declaration of Liberty team visits. There again, that's attracting a lot of interest around other authorities as well. Also, the good CQC inspections, you will see that Council's Reablement Service, Waterton Hub, and the Council's Supported Living Services were both rated as good in all areas, which is really good to say that. Just on the homeless new regulations, there was a seminar held for members, which I know some people did attend, and I think the information has gone out to all members. So that's really interesting if you read that information, because it just explains the new regulations and how we're dealing with that. With that, Mr Mayor, I'll move my report and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Garbett. Are there any questions to Councillor Mrs Garbett on her report? Councillor Harvey.
Mr Mayor, I have paid a visit to the hospital social care team last Tuesday, and I have to say that it was a very impressive visit. I have been able to talk to almost all the team and also the three new recruitment nurses as well, and I felt that I was told the funding is adequate at the moment and the dedication is great, and also that we are moving very fast with the patient discharge as well as, and help the patient to be reoriented from the hospital to the community. And for that, I thank Ms. Garber for your work.
Are there any other questions or comments on Councillor Mrs Garbett's report? Councillor Monica Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually visited the resource centre in Beckett, Thomas Beckett School this week, and it was very impressive that children with autism, that centre is there for them, understands them, and it's a place of a source of refuge for them when being in the classroom is just too much and they can leave. And it's good to know that these resource centres are there for these children, but it would be nice if all schools could have something similar. But the one in Thomas Beckett is doing a fantastic job. Thank you for that.
I think just on with academies, it's always difficult to sort of liaise with academies. We are trying our best to do that, and I know that work will be ongoing. But thank you for that, Monica.
Councillor Holwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on Councillor Garbett's point about academies, I doing some invigilation at Horbury Academy, and I have to say that they have very adequate resources for all their children, you know, whatever difficulties they have. So that's one academy that I could personally vouch for.
Thank you, Margaret. It's not really in my area, but I'm sure Margaret's listened to what's been said, so hopefully we'll take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sally. Councillor Scott.
I'd just like to, it's not a question, it's a comment. I'd just like to say thank you for the work that's been done with to try and prevent sight loss with the community team and public health, and to try and get people to go and visit the optician, because on visiting the optician, my husband, they saved his life, so we went straight to hospital, and unfortunately it didn't save his sight, but it saved his life. So I'd urge anyone to go and visit the optician.
Thank you for that. As you will know with the content of that report, you know, how many people are not aware of certain issues around there. So we are trying to look at the vision and develop to inform and empower people to take that responsibility on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stansby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the preventable sight loss, I've been attending the meetings because I've been asked to be a trustee of Wakefield District Sight Aid, and apparently 50% is preventable, and part of that prevention is exercise. And I was wondering if it was something that you could consider putting the creche back into Thorns Park to encourage mums and children to attend gyms. Just a question. I know it's a question. I'll get it in wherever I can because it's important, and it's part of preventable sight loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Garbett. Are there any other questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Garbett's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Mrs Garbett. The next report is the portfolio holder for children and young people. Councillor Mrs Isherwood, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, first of all, before I present the report, I'd like to give my thanks to the liaison and diversion team that came in prior to the meeting to do a briefing for members. The work they do is quite amazing. I will arrange for the slides from that briefing to go out to all members to see the sort of work that is being done by that team. Looking at the report, I'll just pick one or two things out. The next Ofsted visit will be the 21st and 22nd of May, when the team will be looking at the multi-agency safeguarding hub and the front door arrangements. We also, I'd like to mention the young carers piece here. I'm pleased that we as a council are recognising the challenges that young carers are facing, and that we are making strong efforts to support these young people, and in fact just identifying them is in itself a challenge. But I would also like to make special mention to Councillor Faith Heptonstall, who is doing an amazing amount of work to help these young people and is actually championing their cause. And with that, Mr Mayor, I'll move my report and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Isherwood. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Margaret, just on agenda page 39, it says that there's been work being done with current foster carers to see how we keep them, and I welcome that, that we're working with the ones we've got, because we do want to keep them, we want to offer them the best we can. Is there any scope to go back a little bit further to those that did leave the service to find out why they left and what we could have done better at that time to support them? Because I think it's important to find out why people left us. Whilst it is important to keep people, we should also try and work better at why people left and improving that as well.
Yes, that would be a good idea actually, because I think it is important to find out that gives us an idea of how we can help to retain foster carers. They're playing a very important role And if there's something that we can pick up from why someone's left in the past, I don't see why we can't actually go back and ask and find out.
Councillor Tennant-King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just a comment I'd like to make on the Marketplace event. I'd like to thank for organising that. I went along with several of my colleagues. It was nice to talk to the staff and get information from them, and if anybody comes to us with any problems, at least now I feel confident enough to be able to guide them to the right place. It's nice to see that they're saying that it's going to be a yearly event, and I urge anybody who didn't attend to attend the next one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Maureen, for that. It was a brilliant event, and I think people who went, not just members, but actually staff involved in it, found it extremely useful to be able to network with people within the directorate who they possibly hadn't met but have dealings with. So yes, we are making it an annual event, and I think it's really helpful. It will be, especially for new members. So I would urge people to attend the next one.
Thank you. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to congratulate Faith and yourself, Margaret, on the young carers. Catherine and myself went to the conference that they held, and what we learnt there were unbelievable. We didn't think that children had to do what they have to do with them being young carers. It's amazing, and I think they all need to be on a pedestal, because I don't think a lot of people could do it, and they don't think they're doing it. It's just natural to them, and it was a fantastic conference we went to. Thank you.
Councillor Faith Eprisdale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just adding to both Councillor Isherwood's and Councillor Crew's comments, it was a real privilege to open the Young Carers event at the Oating Castleford alongside Abby Houghton, who is a Wakefield Youth Parliament member and also a young carer herself. And as Abby says, and as it says in the report, that young carers like Abby don't want to feel any different from anybody else or to feel isolated, but what they do want is support from us, and they want the support and the profile raising of young carers. So what I would like to ask everybody in this room today is that we all raise the profile of young carers in all the appropriate networks that we work in. Thank you.
To respond.
I have to agree with that. I think, as Yvonne said, a lot of these young people, and they are young people, some of them are under 10 years of age, and they do not really appreciate that they are young carers, and that the job that they're doing is so difficult. And I think it is beholden to all of us to look for and identify these young people and at least signpost them in a direction that they need to go in. So yes, I totally agree, Faith.
Thank you. Councillor Harmon.
Agenda page 31, Ofsted monitoring visit feedback. I think it's important to acknowledge where there has been strengths. The verbal feedback shows from the first 4 or 5 bullet points that I've read and the rest of it as well. It's important that it's showing that service is on the right journey to improvement, particularly within the leadership comments on there. But I think it's important that we go back to Ofsted and ask them for it says there Ofsted will not be publishing a formal letter, and I think as it continues in their verbal reports, as everyone should know that's dealt with Ofsted, don't mean much unless they are written down. And I think it's important that either the director or yourself write back to Ofsted and ask for this to be formally written down, because I think it's important that this is acknowledged in writing by Ofsted, the improvements that have been made. So when the monitoring visits are over and there is an inspection, there's a reference point to the journey that's taken place to improve the service within Wakefield.
Yes, thank you for that. The next 2 visits, there will be 2 more visits, and both those visits will have a published written report. So it won't be verbal, it will be a published written report.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's regarding the marketplace event on the 5th of March, Councillor Shutt. Thank you very much for organising that. It was a fantastic event. Having recently attended the forum earlier this month, can I say how interesting it was to talk to the actual frontline staff? I think in the past we've probably been hoodwinked by words that are said from the hierarchy, but BATI is held in very high regard by all the frontline staff I spoke to, and they did say that there have been vast improvements in the last 6 months, and that is down to the actual management system. The workloads have reduced, so we're not being conned, and they said that they were overjoyed to hear BATI was coming to Wakefield. The only criticism I could say of it, I did actually speak to them for quite some time, all the frontline staff, there were about 5 or 6 that were there. They did say, as you were walking round, I asked them if they knew who you were, and they didn't know who you were, so it's only if you can actually get out to see them and speak to them and tell you actually who you are, then that'd be very helpful to them, I think. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you for those comments. I obviously haven't got your outstanding personality, Nick, that people look and say, oh, it's Margaret. But yet, I have been out visiting, and it is a vast directorate, but I do try to visit as many people as I can, and I would encourage all members to join the senior leadership visiting team, visiting programme, and go out and visit. I will try and visit all the many thousands if I can. So, yes, thank you for those comments, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Isherwood? Councillor Stansby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just reiterate what's been already said. The marketplace event was really informative. Appreciate that, and thank you for putting it on. If anything, the 10-minute sessions were too short. So, but I do have one comment, and that is, could you please look at giving foster carers a pension? All it takes is to give them £2.95 extra a week. That's all, so that they can pay their own Class 2 national insurance, and it's the least that they deserve. They get paid less than £2.10 an hour for a brilliant job with 2 weeks off a year. I think they deserve a pension. Thank you.
Thank you. As I've said in an email that was sent out to all members after the last council meeting, and as is said in here, we are totally reviewing the offer that is made to foster carers. We're speaking to foster carers, we're surveying them. We'll also bring in, as Councillor Collins asked, that we will go back to previous foster carers and speak to them as well. So we are doing, and we will fetch back our findings and our decisions about that later.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Isherwood. If there are no further questions or comments, thank you, Councillor Mrs Isherwood. Next is the acting portfolio holder for corporate services. Councillor Michael Graham, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to highlight on page 41, in addition to the business rates relief agreed by Cabinet in January, we also saw in February the launch of the Council's new early payment initiative. This will help around 1,000 small and medium local businesses by accelerating payment terms. What this means, in effect, is we are cutting the amount of time it takes for money to get into bank accounts by over half. This will not only help improve cash flow, but it will also help businesses locally to use the money to reinvest and give them opportunities within their own business. So it's a fantastic programme. With that, Mr. Mayor, I move our report. Thank you.
Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a question about the Citizen. It says here the copies of the Citizen are a resident newspaper. Is it meant to be for the whole of the Wakefield district or just the Wakefield and the 5 towns? Because there's nothing in about our side of the district at all. Ossett, Horbury and the surrounding districts are not mentioned once. And the only reason I can imagine is because we get nothing over that side, so there's nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. In this edition, I'm not sure if there's anything in Ossett or not. I tend to focus on my own area. I'm sure there are a lot of fantastic things in Ossett, so we'll definitely make sure that for the next one, all the work the Council's been doing for Ossett and the work Councillor Masterman, etc. has been involved in will be in there. Thank you.
Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question's also about the Citizen. I got 2 copies. Anybody else get 2 copies? I think you ought to organise that a little bit better. There's one free with the postman and one paid postage, which is a waste of money. We don't need 2. Thank you.
Councillor Tully.
Point to clarification. If I remember rightly, it's not that many budgets ago that the Tory opposition's one of their half a dozen things they used to write down at the back of a fag packet was to get shut at Citizen. Now we're suggesting they want 2. Now they better make their mind up which way they want now. If they want 2, we can have 2. We can have. Well, you said. What I'm saying is, not that long ago, they wanted to abolish the Citizen altogether. Can I just suggest that if you want to get something in the Citizen, get something done where you're on the race from.
Are there any other questions or brief comments on the report? If not, thank you, Councillor Graham. Moving on to the portfolio holder for culture, leisure and sport. Councillor Miss Spade, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items that I'd like to draw attention to. During February half-term, our libraries worked with Public Health to promote the Change for Life Sugar Swap campaign. Information was provided on food swaps that could be made to reduce the amount of sugar that children eat. Public Health arranged free fruit, which was generously donated by Ossett market trader Richard Porter, so thank you to him. Also, a brief mention of 2 museums exhibitions. The first is the Museum Hub at South Emsall Library has a new display entitled It's the Knockout, about the late local Frickley colliery worker and boxer George Dilks, who became the North Central Area Middleweight Boxing Champion in 1948-49. Secondly, we're all proud of our Rugby League heritage, and I'd like to draw your attention to a new exhibition in a league of their own at Castleford Museum, which celebrates all our local clubs, Wakefield Trinity, Featherstone Rovers and Castleford Tigers, as well as other clubs further afield. Finally, keeping to the sporting theme, on the 16th of March, Featherstone Sports Complex hosted round 4 of the National Junior League Under-18s in wheelchair basketball. Also at the complex, we've introduced swimming lessons for children with special needs, educational needs and disabilities who find that learning to swim is quite difficult for them and a little bit challenging. So when ready, they will then progress as they're more able and confident to the Learn to Swim programme. With that, I bring my report.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Spade. Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Miss Spade's report? Councillor Isherwood.
Being so proud to represent the town of Culture in Wakefield Metropolitan District Council area, I'd like to thank the members that turned up to the, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but we have a thing called the War Horse in Featherstone. I don't know if I've mentioned it before. If I have, I apologise. And I'd like to thank the members that turned up, and I'm sure everyone found it a very, very moving occasion when the Tommies that were fixed to the War Horse site, I don't know why I was drop on it, but they always give me a poem to read, and I struggle reading it because it's that emotional. When you look at these white markers and you think that every one of those represents just in a town like Featherstone, 353 just in that one place alone. And then you go down road 100 yards and there's another war memorial to another 100 or so, and so on. It goes all the way around district. And I'm so proud of that. And I thank for everybody for supporting getting the Tommies fixed in that site. I understand it's now going forward for a national award. And I think if anybody can think of anything better, let me know and we'll go and pull it down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Graham, I agree. I've driven past and seen that war horse and It's not a magnificent sight. I just hope that we keep it safe. You know what I mean? That's a big hope. But yeah, I'd just like to say about this. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Tova Tafel. It's the magic table. I was there in Sound Library when it was being demonstrated. It's the most amazing thing. Amazing thing. So there are a lot of benefits and services for our elderly people, particularly with Alzheimer's and dementia. There is a lot in the area to support them and help them. And this is the most amazing thing. So congratulations on getting those tables in place. Thank you.
On the same matter, obviously it's in the Wakefield Library, and it is such a valued piece of equipment to people of all ages and not necessarily associated with severe issues of dementia alone. It can be used by young people and it can be used by all people in terms of executing and increasing their mind value. But I would at this point like to say, Mr Mayor, on behalf of the Wakefield members, that's Margaret and Tracy and myself, that this is all down to the funding that we've received through the Capital Grants Programme from this council. Without that, we couldn't fund these schemes, and I think it shows the value of having the capital grants. The cost of these in terms of the buying power would not be in any of our remit individually, but through this grant we are able to provide this piece of valuable equipment for Wakefield, and I do hope at some time in the future that if we have the funds available, I would like to be able to increase the use of this in other places across the ward and make it available as well through, I'm sure, maybe even combining some schemes together across other parts of the district. So I do very well and want to really say a big thank you to the Capital Grant Scheme for enabling us to buy this for Wakefield 1.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's regarding the library at Ossett Town Hall. Once again, there's been no movement. The Cabinet decision made roughly 6 months ago. There's been no movement. The scheduled events was meant to be the end of, or finished for the end of July. There's nothing happened. To say that we're getting frustrated is the understatement. But maybe I've got a solution. Perhaps we could possibly say Ossett Town Hall's in Castleford, and then something may be done.
Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment about the War Horse. I drove past it going to Pontefract Hospital, and because it's near traffic, it's at the traffic lights, and I got peeped from behind because they'd gone onto green, and I was just staring at it. It's absolutely stunning. It looks wonderful. So, no, you're welcome. I got beeped and beep 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 like that because I was just staring at it. It's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Spade.
Thank you, Councillor Farmer. As you know, we have shared correspondence about Ossett Library, and as you know, we are doing our best to try and move things. We've hit things that we didn't anticipate, and we've trained very hard through corporate landlord to move it forward.
Councillor Mrs Isherwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I reiterate what Betty said about the Toppy Tackle table. I actually went in with my grandson, and it is not just for dementia, which is good, but also young children really enjoy playing with it, and it was great to be able to use our money in that way. I just want to congratulate you on the Food and Drink Rhubarb Festival, Jackie. I visited it, and it gave such a buzz to the city centre. It was absolutely amazing. If we could have one every week, that would be really good.
Thank you, Mrs Isherwood. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say, Jackie, what a marvellous thing it is regarding the inclusive educational needs swimming for all young children that have special needs or disabilities, which obviously means they do learn to swim, and then it's a sport that can participate in with their able-bodied friends. Well done.
Councillor Holwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, my comment is also about the Wakefield Festival of Food, Drink and Rhubarb. It goes from strength to strength each year. I visited on the Saturday afternoon, and I think and hopefully it will give a welcome boost to Wakefield City Centre and to our shops in Wakefield. And it was a superb thing, and I'm so glad that we do have it. Focus on rhubarb and our unique situation in the area. But I'd also like to say that I've passed the Warhorse, and it is absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad that you've got it.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Sorry, would you like to reply? Councillor, sorry? No?
Yeah, if I would just like to say thank you to everyone who's commented on the Rhubarb Festival. I didn't mention it because I've mentioned it so many times leading up to it, but it is the most wonderful event for our city. It does give an economic boost to the town, and I went twice, and it was, as you say, so we said, it was absolutely buzzing, and it just does get better and better, and we need events like that for all our businesses in town. So it's great that everybody had such a lovely time, and we have probably the best thank you letter we've ever received in terms of a visitor to the Rhubarb Festival, so that was very heartening to receive.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. It's really good at the festivals that they have in Wakefield. I must admit I've been to them, but there are other towns as well that want things to go on in their town to help their businesses, and we tried very, very hard to put them on in Ossett. And when we've asked for financial assistance, and we don't ask for much, we've been denied it every year. We get nothing, no financial help whatsoever for all the events that we put on in Ossett. It's always down to us.
I'm sorry you feel that way. As you know, there is only so much money, and we spread it across the district as best we can. There are other towns that don't have support from us for events and festivals. We try to aim it where the biggest populations are, but it's not fair to say that Ossett doesn't get anything. I mentioned to you after the last council how we're investing £50,000 in football for Ossett. You may pull a face at football, but actually we have got lots of people that absolutely love football. Ossett is the centre of the universe in terms of our district, in terms of football. There are so many teams. I was absolutely amazed to see how many go through. So there are going to be hundreds of young people in Ossett and the surrounding area that will benefit from that, and it is an investment that this council has made in that town.
Are there any further questions or comments on Councillor Ms Spade's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Ms Spade. The next report is the portfolio holder for Communities and Environment. Councillor Mrs Cummins, will you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And as we see more and more reports in the press around domestic abuse and victims of domestic abuse being stalked, harmed and in some cases murdered by partners and former partners, it's heartening to see that the Clare's Law campaign is very timely, being run by the police, which is encouraging victims or potential victims of domestic abuse to use their right to ask to ensure that they're free from risk of harm. The information on how you can do that is held within the report. Keeping Britain tidy, Stop the Drop is in full swing at the moment. In fact, I don't think the council has got one litter pick to implement. Actually, down on Demmydale Road at the moment, they're all out. People are volunteer groups are litter picking like fury. And at the end of the campaign, we will weigh up just how much volunteers have picked up, and obviously that will come to the next meeting. But it is wonderful, and I pay testament again to the volunteers across the district who do innumerable things, but particularly at the moment the Keep It Britain campaign and Stop the Drop. And as I say, if you're not involved, and I'm sure most of us are involved in either a litter pick over the next couple of weeks in our ward, congratulations to you and to the groups that are doing it and in helping to keep the district clean and tidy. And with that, I move my report and we'll take any questions.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Maureen, you are quite right about the people who volunteer and do so much good work around the district. Tomorrow, as you are aware, you'll join myself and the Mayor to present a certificate to Ryan Goodlad, who lives in my ward and for many years has done so many good litter picks and so much voluntary work. Myself and Councillor Williams have put together a certificate that we can present to him. But is there any way, Maureen, that you and your department, especially your communities head on, we can look at now ways of where we can actually put people forward for certificates and some sort of recognition for the work that they do in our communities? A lot of people don't want a lot of fuss about it, but it's nice to have a pat on the back and say thank you. So I wonder if your department can look at that, please.
Yeah, we've talked about this, Matthew, and you're absolutely right. We used to, a few years ago, we did used to reward our volunteers within the community through our area forum work. I have spoken to Anthony Sadler, who is Head of Communities, about seeing what we can do about certificates and maybe just a small voucher, just to realise the work that some of our volunteers do that members can nominate. But I will report back on that once we've concluded our negotiations.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The cremation service has gone up this year again, and that is in the last 2 years the service fee has gone up by 12.5%. It is a very, very big increase. Taking account of CPI at the moment is 1.8%. So I wonder, the bereavement family has no choice but to pay the fee. Whether Councillor Cumming can look into the fee structure and see what we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very timely that you've talked about that. We have been looking at cremation fees and shortening times, lengthening times, built around what people can and cannot afford. So it is something we are aware of and it is something we're looking at.
Councillor Pickett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to come on about the war horse. It's just for Maureen to thank the street scene guys who did a fantastic job installing them and getting the ground ready. Also, while I'm going to pinch Graham's thunder here, because working with that, having the Tommies there, they will also be, the war horse will be lit up at the end of the month on lighting on a night time, all solar lights, and also there will be a new path all the way around up to the war horse, so people with disabilities will be able to go up and have a look and see what a fantastic memorial field we've got.
Councillor Mrs Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Maureen, in Agbrick, as you know, they're working very hard. Every Sunday they're out, they're gathering tons, and I mean tons, of litter and rubbish off the streets. A big issue is that landlords, when they empty a house, they're just dumping it. Even though these people are working all day Sunday, sometimes on a Monday, there are sweets in the ginnels and things like that. So Street Scene have done a fantastic job. As soon as somebody reports it, it's cleared away. But working with landlords would be a great help, you know, to eliminate this problem. But also, talking about recognition, some of the community group have asked me if they could put a board on the park where they've cleaned up the park and planted flowers and if they could have a board to say Agbrick Communities Group were here or did this, you know, would we have to get permission for that, or can we just say to them, yes, you did the work, and if you get a board made and pay for it yourself, have you any issue with putting that board on areas where they have cleared up?
I wouldn't see that as being a problem as long as it was a small board and not a big board. But I think it's if it is you clean an area up and you do some planting and you want to put a board there, just let us know. Let's have a look what it might look like, and then we can say yes or no to it.
Councillor Michael Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to say thank you, Maureen, to the officers who were involved in the depot and handing out litter pickers and bags and providing that equipment. I was out last Saturday with a group of school children from Wakefield Methodist Junior School, and we went to Thorns Park. Surprisingly, we couldn't find any litter whatsoever, I was kind of a bit panicked, thinking, what are we out here for? 30 year 6 children, trust me, they got into every nook and cranny, every bush, and they got 15 bags from deep within Thorns Park. But I want to say thank you to the officers who were involved in that, because they make it so easy. They provide the pick, the high-vis vest, they're flexible with dates, and they're the ones who enable these amazing volunteers to get out there in the first place. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or brief comments? Councillor Stansbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yep, just to reiterate that, Maureen, I believe, thank you, that my next few weekends are now going to be spent picking up litter. Brilliant. But yeah, the community groups in the ward are on board with this. And if you've got any spare litter pickers, Michael, please send them over to Cargate, because it's horrendous up there. But no, Street Scene are absolutely brilliant. They've been dealing with the community groups and they're spot on. Thank you.
Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I arranged and attended a litter pick at Spring Mill in Ossett on Sunday. And sorry to be crude, but people actually picked up the dog mess and put it in the black bags and thrown them in the bushes. So the most thing that was collected that day was dog mess. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments on Councillor Cummins' report? If not, thank you, Councillor Mrs Cummins. Final Cabinet members' report is that of the portfolio holder for Transport and Highways. Councillor Morley, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I hope Council appreciate it. It's quite a positive report. Once again, lots of things that we're doing within transportation highways across the district. Also very pleased to see that the additional monies that are going into highways repairs that we have put in, the extra £3 million, will make a massive difference to the roads around our district as well. Parking attendants are civic officers. I'm amazed, Mr Mayor, of some of the abuse that they get. Myself and Councillor Carrington last year attended with some of our officers to patrol Pontefract. They're doing a job enforcing traffic regulation orders, things that we want enforcing. The looks, the stares, the comments that are made to them are absolutely unacceptable, Mr Mayor, and attacks on them as well. I know myself and Councillor Cummins have been having a conversation about enforcement across both our portfolios, but it's something that we will not be accepting, and we will take a zero approach to any attack on any of our enforcement officers in future, Mr Mayor. We will work with the police and we will fetch anybody that attacks will be fetched to justice. So I wanted to raise that today because I think it's important, Mr Mayor, that they're doing their job, going around the district, enforcing traffic regulation orders that everybody wants to have in place. So there's no excuse for it, Mr Mayor, whatsoever. So with that, I have my report.
Councillor Cummins.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Matthew on that. It was a point I was going to raise on agenda page 66, and it isn't just the enforcement people, it's other people who are undertaking enforcement across the district are being subject to attack. And the sooner that we get beyond legal, so that we can get these body-worn cameras for these people to help protect them, the better. So I would urge that wherever it's stuck in legal, that it comes out very quickly, and our enforcement people are issued with body-worn cameras.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Matthew, I know I've said this before, but I don't want to repeat the positivity around cycleway improvements. It's made a vast difference. I've got the Friends of Frida's Garden complimenting us on the work that's been done. It supports what they've been doing for a long time, and they're happy to maintain that canal side environment. And from the anglers as well, there's a couple of wheelchair users who are over the moon about it. Now they can just the whole stretch. Seems like they're there 24 hours a day, but they are a regular bunch, and they do make maximum use of that. So yeah, it's great.
I think it's really important the comment that Councillor Burton raised. People sometimes don't always like psychopaths and say they're a complete waste of money. As we see, younger people have problems paying for transport. As we see, younger people are not buying cars or not passing the test of the act, and the cycleway drop across this district, become a vast, well-used resource for people who use the bike, who want to get to work, who want to travel safely. And it's also right when you say it's open the riverbank and open areas up to people who will be able to get down there in future. So I do think it's brilliant the comment you do make, and I do think these will be lasting legacies as these go on.
Councillor Austin.
Yeah, my comment is on the rail station improvement, Matthew. I just want to say thank you really on behalf of some of the residents in Atwood for looking at the issue of parking. I've got parents that have lived at Grandstand Road for 50 years and there's been an increase in cars parking up there because there's no room at the station because the station is already used. So I just wanted to say thank you, Matthew, on behalf of some of the residents up there that you're looking at the parking issue.
Yes, it's a valid point that you do make. The West Yorkshire Combined Authority has had a programme of improving car parks for a couple of years now. We've done quite successful in Wakefield, what with South Emsall car park. We're also looking at Normanton car park, Castleford car park, all connected to train stations. Issues that we faced in Outwood, though, is people parking on streets. There isn't enough room in the car park, causing misery for people who live on the areas can't get parked outside. So I do welcome your comments. I do think it will be welcomed in the community as it's a much needed asset for that area. Bear in mind, if it doesn't go to Outwood, the funding will probably go to another part and West Yorkshire will miss out on it.
Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 68, the virtual reality goggles. Now, I recently went to Highways Marketplace and Councillor Morley virtually dragged me over. And we both, for to go with goggles, and they are, I couldn't stop thinking about them for 3 days. They are absolutely vivid. And my question is there any plans in place to put these to sort of colleges and things like that to show the kids what can happen when you're on your phone and you have an accident? You know, I think it's something that struck me so much. I've not been able to get that out of my mind. It was so vivid. It's really shocking when you watch and you think you're there. They really are graphic. And if anything's going to work, that might. So are there any plans to roll them into colleges, high schools, etc., etc.? Thank you.
Yes, you are right. I tried it myself, and it is actually shocking when you feel like you're sat in the car and to be in the aftermath of a car crash is something which none of us ever want to be in. You actually fetch it over to you see it in reality like that. You are right, and it will be rolled out. We'll look at ways of rolling out in colleges as well, and working with partner agencies to make sure, especially young people who pass the test. I think to see something like that, and I will say there's another marketplace taking place with Highways on the 1st of April. In the Wakefield Suite, Wakefield 1, that will be there again. So if anybody wants to see the footage or experience that, please come along. All right, we'll work with partner agencies to make sure it's rolled out, and especially to people who pass the tests as well.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got some good news for Councillor Matthew because finally the portal has been repaired in Long Hill Close. I got a thank you email from the resident there to say that it's so many years struggle, but at last got some nice roads that they can walk on, they can drive on. But to me, the sad news is it's too little too late because the other residents, Arthur has passed away and he did not live to see this to happen. This council also just last month voted down the Conservative amendment for extra 5,000 portals to be repaired, and I wonder whether the council will reconsider your plans. The other issue is the rise. Ambulance could not get in because of the parking in front of St James Schools. We wonder whether the council can look into resident permit to be issued because it's getting worse and worse on Durker Lane and Durker Rise. Thank you.
It's funny, if you just reported the pothole when he first told you about it, it will have been, instead of waiting 6 months or 7 or 10 months, whatever it was. So it's wrong, Councillor. I'm sorry. You reported dropping events the other week and it's done so. Just want to show you, if you do your cake on time, it will get done. Obviously, you are very, very busy trying to be the Conservative for the next general election, so I obviously do have time is very much taken up at the moment. Regarding permit parking, I don't really see how issuing residential permit parking will solve the problem outside St James School, because you still have cars there. Options are being looked at, but it's very, very difficult with the amount of road space and pavement we've got around there. So I do know officers are aware of it and they're trying to work on a scheme. I do remember your predecessor, Councillor Barker, championed a scheme around there. But it wasn't down to the cost of the money of it, it's actually just around the room and what we can actually do in that area with different sidelines, different problems. So it's not as straightforward as you make it out to be. It's not down to funding.
Are there other further questions or brief comments on Councillor Morley's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Morley, and that concludes the Cabinet members' reports. Agenda item 9 is to provide Council with the current picture of poverty across the district. Is the report moved? Is the report seconded?
Second the report, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour of the recommendation? Against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Agenda item 10. Agenda item 10 has been withdrawn, so we will move to agenda item 11, which is to deal with any questions made by members. No questions have been submitted. The final agenda item is to deal with any motions proposed by members. Councillor Swift, would you please move your motion to Council?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a three-pronged policy. Firstly, it reaffirms our opposition 5 years ago, an opposition which, if you glance at the wording of the policy 5 years ago, absolutely vindicated in every single element. Secondly, it pledges again to support diversion of huge investments involved into higher priority, more necessary, better return, local and regional schemes that are well acknowledged by a wide range of economies to deliver greater benefits than does the HS2 scheme. And finally, it's not just about being advancing council policies demonstrated as much as this one is to be well-based. It's something where we should take opportunities at any point where the organisation those opportunities and reflect these things in our various strategies and policy documents. One of the things you don't hear about transport is people complaining that the trains to London are too slow. I've never, well, not for years and years and years, I've heard any complaints about trains to London being too slow. It's always regarded as one of the strong points of this area, a strong point at the western end, Wakefield station itself, and people from other parts of West Yorkshire use it, because unlike in Leisure Park, and people from the eastern parts often using the proximity and convenience of Doncaster. So speed isn't an issue. And indeed, every time the speed issue has been put to the proposers, the supporters of HS2 Limited, that, well, what's the great advantage in having a few minutes off the speed? And not just talking Wakefield. The answer is, oh no, it's really about capacity. Well, I'll get back to capacity in a moment or two. And finally, there is actually the need for the money to go on the scheme. Because you see big headlines about this particular infrastructure and all that. But for the most part, there's no money committed behind them. Now, the costs, I'll speak briefly, it's covered elsewhere. Officially 56 billion, they stick to the 56 billion. Every day, week, you hear something that suggests that those costs are going way beyond that. And it's interesting that the only real response from it to, first of all, we will absolutely stick by it. And secondly, we've got a contingency. We'll slow the trains down a bit. This is the chief executive conspiracy theory, that they'll slow the trains down and they'll reduce the maximum number of trains down to 14 a day. Incidentally, that's serving the whole of the Midlands and the North. It's not such a huge number. But the real extra costs are the ones which are actually fully acknowledged in HS2 public statements, particularly by the former chairman, Sir David Higgins. The real extra costs are the money that's not included within the HS2 budget. the scheme after scheme after scheme, which is necessary for HS2 to work, and it's not in that 56 billion. Again, fully acknowledged the technical papers, not up front, but it's there. A great improvement at Leeds Station, publicised, well talked about. Nobody's quite sure what budget that comes out of. Likelihood is it'll compete with other regional schemes. Not so much on our patch, just south. They've diverted a spur into Sheffield for HS2. The northern connection of that is out of the HS2 budget. And the same thing for other connections. Again, less well publicised round here, but acknowledge the HS2 technical papers. Connections from Nottingham to HS2, even connections inside Birmingham from their new station to the existing station and motorway. And when you look at the prices totalled up for the additional, they come well up the kind of amounts that HS2 regularly reject as just being conspiracy theory. So the costs are very real, and in the meantime, we already have expenditure diverted. We've already got assessments of improvements on the East Coast Main Line, south of Doncaster, which have been diverted to improvements north of York on the basis, well, HS2 takes care of it going south. We've already got, to affect as much in Wakefield, we've already got the situation where they say electrification south of Sheffield not needed. But the capacity issue, in way that the need in the north is actually for more coaches and longer trains, not directly for more trains.
Councillor Swift, you
okay.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Swift. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Dagger, seconding the motion. Do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Thank you, Councillor Dagger.
The proposed 56 billion or will it be £100 billion development of HS2 is being promoted on prestigious economic and environmental grounds. However, I am not convinced it will bring such benefits to Wakefield. HS2 would have a significant environmental impact in my particular ward and on the rural community of Warnfield cum Heath. 20 trains an hour filtering through it at 400 kilometres an hour in an environmental corridor as wide as Wembley Stadium. Furthermore, I don't believe HS2 will solve the North's economic problems. It might even make them worse. Indeed, infrastructure experts are not convinced that rapid rail systems spread the wealth around. On the contrary, some evidence suggests that since the lines run both ways, high-speed rail service suck more capital to the prosperous south. Moreover, far from benefiting small cities like Wakefield, it could make them more isolated and deprived. There are huge economic divides between the north and south, and a shiny train line won't necessarily solve them. Indeed, it might just make them worse. And finally, Mr Mayor, can I say, this council should not be railroaded into just accepting HS2. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Dagger. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? May I remind members that speakers must be directed to the question under discussion or to a personal explanation or a point of order. No speech may exceed 5 minutes. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, one of the issues I have with HS2 is the fact that the coalition and Conservative governments have pursued the policy of HS2 at the very same time as their policy of austerity has fetched misery to millions of people in this country. We cannot afford the police, we cannot afford doctors, we cannot afford nurses, we cannot afford the army, yet we can afford millions of pounds on a railway line to get people to London half an hour quicker. The initial cost of £33 is now in excess of that. It's somewhere in the region now 50 to 60, with expected cost to rise well over 100 billion. The government are already put aside £6 billion per year for the next 10 years to spend on HS2, when you think that £6 billion is what rail spends on the entire network on a yearly basis. We have desperately need of in this country, especially in the north of this country, is connectivity. North to west, or east to west, should I say. Manchester, Liverpool, York, Hull. To get connectivity to cities, that's what we need in the North Country. It's ludicrous, Mr Mayor, that we're still using Victorian railway lines. The fact that some of our cities and some of our towns, and the 5 towns, are a prime example of this, the trains can't get above 30 mile an hour. The train commute is now a necessary evil for so many people in this country. With the cost of running a car, the cost of bus prices, the trains are the cheapest and only way they can get to work. But these actually torture people on or at tea time. There's not enough trains. Trains are packed. If the train come up, you manage to get on, you're on for a long wait and delays. But who from HS2? Will it be the people of Featherstone, Pontefract, Outwood, Normanton, who are currently stuffed on packed trains? No, it won't. It will be business and banking executives. Mr Mayor, I do support HS2. What we need is a railway line for the few. What we need is a railway line that's not very few, not the mains. I'm really happy to that. What I'm saying is we need to support everybody. You need to support everybody. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Councillor Burton.
Yeah, the rationale I think is well laid out, Mr Mayor. Only last week, along with Councillor Morley and Swift, we're meeting at the Combined Committee with representatives from Transport for the North and Northern Rail. I have to say we're very sympathetic to the things we were talking about, which is the current problems, not future ones. We're not anticipating development. What we really need is to address the problems of access, especially along the National line. If you can't use the bridge, you can't get on the train. It's as simple as that. This HS2 scheme is not providing any solution to that at all. We could solve the problem along this line, and others as well, and all the other stations available. For a fraction of this, it would be much better spent, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
Mr Mayor, the Conservative Group continues to oppose HS2 on the grounds that the economic benefit for our district is still uncertain. In addition, there is a considerable environmental impact with the proposals as they stand, as well as capacity concerns and how this would affect services here in Wakefield and across the north of England. A number of Conservative controlled councils across the country who are also direct in the path of the HS2 plans have also consistently set out their strong objections to it. The priority needs to be boosting local transport investments locally, with more transport links, improving connectability to enable Wakefield to compete with other cities like Leeds, Manchester and London. Therefore, the Conservative Group will be supporting this motion today. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cummins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased that this is here today, and I'm really pleased that the Council are reaffirming their objections to HS2 on the grounds that we previously discussed, and that is around connectivity. We need connectivity around our district. It's fair to say that you can get into the centre of the district, you can't get around it. I mean, if you want to travel from Havercroft, which is part of our ward, Mossett, which is across the other, you can't. You've got to come and go out again. So connectivity in and around our district is more important, certainly to me. The line goes straight through the ward that Faith and myself represent, and the groups that were working in HS2, it's now reaffirming to them that we are fully in support of them. No economic benefits, not that we can see to the district for HS2 or the introduction of it. What we need is more money, more funding for adult social care, for children's care, for policing, for infrastructure and for a myriad of other things. And the last thing that we want, my voice is going now, which is sometimes a good thing. What we want this government to do is drop this highly expensive project that's not going to benefit anybody in the district. So I fully support the motion.
Collins.
Mr Mayor. Whilst we read a lot about numbers and figures and economic benefit, I want to just stand and support the motion and object to HS2 and you know, to my objection. Essentially what is happening is this government wants to plough a train through communities that are already struggling. People here and in my community will not see any benefit from it. If you look at the compensation scheme, it's laughable. They must be having a laugh. If they do have any idea of how prices and the effect it's going to have on them, then certainly not telling people who are affected. There will be chaos on the roads, a train through our back gardens, a road through an argument who will be stopped off, meaning that HGVs and high haulage vehicles will be diverted past our schools. And if anything, Mr Mayor, it is proof once again that the Tory government never has and never will give an absolute fit about working communities and the working class people.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Repeat what other people have said, probably more than I could, but just a couple. I never like the idea of HS2. Now, I use public transport, probably more than most people in this room do, and the experience of hanging around or going to train stations which are unsafe in the dark, no toilets, no phone, an awful lot of train stations like that. Also, when you get onto the train, you can be anyway to try the Wakefield to Huddersfield one. No one carried at the busiest time of day, mornings and evenings. It can be a very good experience, and as I say, if you're anyway disabled for plenty of times, you can't actually get on bridges and things. So if there is 50 billion to spend on railways, trains in this country, it would be far better to spend it on these companies plus carriages. What about carriages? But when it's in a Monday morning or a Friday evening or times when people need a lot of carriages, they can only send the 1 carriage. If it's a bank holiday, it's 15 carriages. It's actually quite staggering. As for trains to London, they're fantastic. They need to be any better. You get loads of carriages, plenty of seats, and they're half hour. And I don't think that's going to continue with HS2. I'm quite sure those trains will be reduced to once an hour. I think that's probably happen anyway. So, as fairly obvious to everybody else here, I am very much opposed to HS2, and I'd like to see this be better spent on more people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Ahmed.
We can go back a few years and this motion, similar motions have come up, and it's reaffirming our commitment against HS2 as Councillor Sanders has outlined. It's very good I can agree with Councillor Morley on all the pipelines, need a bit of development in there. And you know, we can get around them times at the moment from Sheffield and Wakefield at this moment in time, and most of the service is good as it currently stands. I don't think HS2 adds anything. The economy is just another argument. It's not the right time, it's not the right initiative, and I think the money is better spent, and that's why the motion as it reads today is a good motion, and that's why the Conservative group is supporting it, that we actually need investment in our cities, Leeds, Bradford, Wakefield, all the infrastructure we've got in here needs developing, not adding on other costs onto that, of a system that is a white elephant. And Conservatives and other parties across the whole of the country have expressed concern with HS2, and I think the government should now, actually I think we should oppose this and continue to oppose it, and really go strenuously to our MPs really, and say there's no way that any of us in local government, and I think nationally as well, MPs, no one can support this. I don't think anyone should be supporting this, and I think it's important, I didn't say on the motion that we write and lean on our MPs a little bit, because this is something that's going to go through Parliament, and it's important that it stops where it is, because there's investment that goes into place now, that money that can't be clawed back, so it needs to stop straight away, and the money needs to be diverted, as the motion states in there, in better initiatives that are better for West Yorkshire and Yorkshire and other regions up and down the country. We can't stand here, waste money, and carry on wasting money, because there's money that's going into consultants, costs, other things, to make this happen now. So it needs to stop now. Not, we don't want to be talking about this in 2 years' time when another £10 billion spent on a system that probably won't deliver the speed that is stated at the moment, will probably be out of date by the time it's delivered, and will deliver no benefits to Wakefield or Leeds in that sense as well. Actually, it's just a waste of space, it's a waste of time, waste of money, and no one should support anything to do with HS2 because I think it's a load of rubbish.
Councillor Harvey.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. So you'll hear very well that from my leader and deputy leader, we are very clear in our stance in HS2. But I question the stance of the opposition at the moment, opposite the chamber. So I refer this document just published. It's called Successful Business People Place, and it is in the Wakefield District Economic Strategy. This is a 5-year plan. And in this 5-year plan, number 4, successful places, quote, work with neighbour councils to develop growth corridors and maximise opportunities arising from investment in rail, including Northern Powerhouse Rail and HS2. Okay? So, can this council explain why this is clearly in the 5-year plan of this economic development plan in this district, while they are talking to one group of people different from other group of people? I am a businesswoman. I know what good transportation and infrastructure can bring into the district with jobs, with employment, with prosperity. And IPPR just published the report on the Northern Rail, and the neighbouring council leader, actually, Mrs. Blake, actually welcomed that report. So let's think about how we fit in with the devolution, with all the work we're supposed to do with neighbouring council as well as on the HS2. And I definitely go along with the vote of my group. Thank you.
Councillor Box.
As Councillor Swift said, we passed a resolution, and I think it was agreed by the Conservative group at the time, as I recall, opposing HS2. And we still do. That's the truth. Now then, as I recall, it's a Conservative government in power, and we think the government should cancel it. But you're not going to do that, apparently, unless we can put pressure on the government to do just that. If your government will not change its mind and HS2 happens, obviously we're going to try and get the best deal possible for Wakefield. That's called common sense. Now, that's the way it is. We don't support it, we don't want it. But if things happen, then you take advantage of them as best you can. There's no contradiction whatsoever.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion. I mean, HS2 again, and I'll quote the opposition's words last meeting. This is a vanity project, a big vanity project. Are we not still waiting for new carriages for the trains we've got now that were promised over months and months ago? That people these days are struggling in, I think, refurb buses that are running round, chugging along. I mean, all we've had from this government for the transport system on the rail network is increasing rail fares above inflation, higher dividends to the shareholders for a service that doesn't meet its needs, and surely part of this money will be better spent on a HSB project, high-speed broadband for everybody, because that's what people really need, not that sort of money, 52 billion plus, like my colleague has said, which eventually we don't know the cost of. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Howell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think this whole chamber is in agreement. We've all supported you this time with our speeches, and we supported you last time. I don't know anybody locally or affected by HS2 that is in favour of it. Nobody, even the people you might expect, to be in favour, say no. We have a very good linkage with London, with no problem there. HS2 will bypass Wakefield. The expense is not going to be justified. The money, as we've all said, could be better spent on, various things have been said. But I mean, I'm in favour of a better local network, better connectivity, and the money can be spent in a better way. And it is becoming now a vanity project, which, if we put pressure, as much pressure as we can, we might be able to stop it, and I want to have it stopped. I know lots of experts who study transport, and I include Kevin Swift, Councillor Swift, with those, because I know that he takes a keen interest in this from other people I know who are interested in transport issues and are quite au fait with what goes on. And so, you know, I just want to reiterate that, you know, as individuals, as a group, we do not support HS2, and we back you completely. Thank you.
Councillor Cruz. Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Yeah, just something similar. It's because something Councillor Ahmed said. Is it possible that we can actually, collectively, as a council, write to our MPs, write to the Transport Minister, really kick up a fuss over this together? Because we all feel passionate about it. Nobody wants it. Margaret's right. Nobody wants it. I don't. I've always been opposed to the idea. Cuts into swathes of countryside. It's not practical. It's far too expensive, etc., etc., etc. So if we could actually take active action on that, that to me would be a positive thing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cruz. We wrote to Secretary of State last time. I'm sure we could write again. Thank you. Is anybody else who would like to speak on this motion? Councillor Swift, as mover of the motion, you have the right of reply. In exercising your right of reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced.
Very, very little to say, welcoming almost everything that's been said, and simply echoing the leader's comments in response to Councillor Harvey, that the tail end of the motion asked the Cabinet to take forward, etc. Little point 3, living in a practical world, at the same time maximising what benefits there are for Wakefield while minimising the drawbacks. So, nothing further to say, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. We will now move to the vote. Please show all those in favour of the motion. Please show those against the motion. Any abstentions? That is carried. That was the last item on the agenda. Thank you, colleagues, for your attendance. The next council meeting is on the 17th of April 2019. I now declare the council meeting closed.